All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Let us begin. So I want to begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul, Avraham Shaindy Kelman, for dedicating all the shiurim and drashos this month in memory of their parents. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Adam and Leslie Rosen, as a zechus for Refuah Shileimah for Chaim, Yosef ben Batya. We thank Hilary Jacobson-Kent and Yisrael Doniel Jacobson for dedicating the week of learning commemoration of the yahrzeit of Milton Jacobson, Mordechai Menashe ben Shirmeyahu. And we thank Paul and Pollack for dedicating the shiurim this week as a zechus for Refuah Shileimah for Alter ben Golda Etcha. We also thank our Daf Yomi sponsors, Yitz and Shira Oppenheim, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Moshe Adler, Moshe ben Aaron. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families a nechama. But with that, let us begin. I also want to thank you to Jeremy and to Menachem just for everything in the shul, Baruch Hashem, in this building is on the verge of breaking. Either it's already broken or it's about to break. So any time, this is not a pitch for the building fund, but this is just like any time we have to move something or pull something, it's about to come down in some way. So thank you very much also for taking care of that. It's incredibly appreciated. So with that, let us begin. So today's daf is daf Vav. We are picking up in Yitz Hashem on the bottom of Hema Beis. Well, so let me just clarify one point before we begin. Because yesterday what we did is we spoke about the concept of Yoma Arichta versus Sveka de Yoma. Now, some of you may be thinking, it seems to be pretty academic, because at the end of the day, the result is the same thing, which is what? 2 days. Keep 2 days. So that's a failure in my koach hahesber, if that's what you're thinking. So let me take a moment to explain this. The fundamental difference is as follows. Sveka de Yoma, when you observe 2 days of Yom Tiv, while you're observing that Yom Tiv, you actually don't know which is the correct day of Yom Tiv. We're talking about in the original formulation of Yom Tiv Sheni, of Yom Tiv Sheni. Not talking about now, when the calendar is fixed and established. But in the original observance of Yom Tiv Sheni, you were living in a diaspora community, you did not know. Is today Sukkot, first day of Sukkot? Is tomorrow the first day of Sukkot? And at no point in time during the observance of those 2 days were you 100% clear as to which day was the correct day. So you observed both of them out of Safek. Yoma Arichta is, I'm observing 2 days, but I have absolute clarity about what? About which day is Yom Tiv. Now again, at the beginning, remember as Rashi pointed out yesterday, Rashi pointed about 1,000 years ago, but we learned it yesterday, right? That when you would begin the night of the 30th, observing Yom Tiv, and not sure exactly if it was going to be Yom Tiv, but within a couple of hours, you knew. So that by the end, in other words, over the course of those 2 days of Rosh Hashana, you had absolute clarity as to which was the first of Tishrei and which was the second of Tishrei, or which one was the last day of Elul and the first day of Tishrei. So therein lies the difference. Sveka de Yoma, there's calendrical ambiguity throughout the observance of the 2 days, but I have to keep both of them because I'm not sure which is the right day. Yoma Arichta, I know which one is the right day. But because, again, of a technical issue with the Eidos, I have to keep both days. So the result is I'm keeping 2 days. But the reason, or I should say, my mindset or my clarity, my calendrical clarity on Yom Arichta, I know which is the right day, I know which is the add-on day. Sveka de Yoma, I never really know which is the correct day, and therefore I'm keeping both days out of doubt. So I hope that clarifies it a bit more. And also with that, let's go on. Now the good news is we're not out of that sugya yet. So Mir Hashem, there is still more, we're still going to delve into that more. So also we have incredible sugyas ahead of us today. So let's begin. Says the Gemara, we'll say we're up to Amarava. Last 2 lines, Hema Beis 5b. Says the Gemara, Amarava. So Rava says, the halacha follows Rav in these 3 cases. Now, which 3 cases are we making a reference to? Shabbos says, remember again, this goes back a little bit. We had Rav quoted a number of times on Daf Dalid Amud Aleph. So remember again, the first time we had Rav was when you have Shabbos and Yom Tov together. Rav says, Nolda Bazu Asura Bazu. right? So if the chicken lays an egg on Shabbos, not only is it muktzah on Shabbos, but it's also going to be asr on Yom Tov. That was the first Rav. Second Rav we saw was Shnei Yomim Tovim Shal Galios, right? Regular 2-day Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz. Rav says Nolda Bazeh Muteres Bazeh, that if the chicken lays the egg on day 1, you can't use it on day 1, but halacha l'maisa, it's mutter on day 2. That was the second statement of Rav. And the third statement of Rav was Shnei Yomim Tovim Shal Rosh Hashana Nolda Bazu Asura Bazu. Right? So halacha number 1, when you have Shabbos and Yom Tov together, if the chicken lays the egg on Shabbos, it's going to be asur on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Halacha number 2, 2 Yomim Tovim Yom Tov Sheni Shal Golios. When the chicken lays the egg on day 1, it's mutter on day 2. And halacha number 3, when it comes to the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, Nolda Bazu, Asura Bazu. So Rava says the halacha follows Rav in these 3 cases. Amar Rava, both at top of Vav. This is an incredible sugya. Meis b'yam tov rishon yisasku bo amamin. What happens if a Jew passes away on the first day of Yom Tov? So Rava say, what are you allowed to do in terms of burying the mace on Yom Tov? So Rava says, if a Jew dies on Yom Tov, yisasku bo amim. You could have non-Jews bury the individual. You don't have to wait till after Yom Tov. You can have non-Jews bury the individual. Meis b'Yom Tov Sheni. What happens if a person passes away on Yom Tov Sheni? Right? Second day Yom Tov. Remember, diaspora, second day Yom Tov. Yisasku bo Yisrael. Listen to this. Even Jews are allowed to bury someone on the second day Yom Tov. Va'afilu b'shnei yamim tovim shal Rosh Hashanah. And this is true when it comes to a mace. Even on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, masha'en ke b'Beitzah. Interestingly enough, so remember, Chazal were not mekel. We just saw Rava was not mekel, or Rav I should say, was not mekel on a Beitzah second day Yom Tov. Yet halacha l'maisa, you're allowed to go ahead and bury a mace on the second day Yom Tov. And I will say this halacha is in fact codified in Shulchan Aruch, that if a person passes away on the first day Yom Tov, you're allowed to instruct Goyim to go ahead and bury the mace. Person passes away on the second day Yom Tov, Jews themselves are permitted to bury the mace. Now Rav Moshe, zechus livracha, has a tshuva about this, and he explains, you don't really see this today. The truth is, you do see this in 2 communities. You find it in some of the Yekisha communities, in some of the German communities, and in some of the Hasidisha communities. A number of years ago, the Satmar Rebbe, zechus livracha, there was a terrible tragedy in his family. I think it was his daughter and his granddaughter who perished in a fire on Yom Tov, and they conducted the Levaya on second day Yom Tov. So in some of the Hasidisha communities, some of the Yakisha communities, they do this. Rav Moshe says the reason we don't do this today is one simple reason, which is refrigeration. So Rav Moshe says again, the whole heter to go ahead and bury on Yom Tov Rishon, on Yom Tov Sheni, is an issue of nivel hames, right? Decomposition of the body. But because we have refrigeration and can wait till after Yom Tov, the general minhag is we wait till after Yom Tov. Good. Now, I'm sorry?
Both days of Rosh Hashanah or one second day?
Second day Rosh Hashanah. No, so it's a lahalocha, we're machmir on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, only be second day. That's how Shulchan Aruch paskins. So Nardoi Amri, af bebeitzah. So Nardoim said, right, in other words, the Gemara here reads af b'shnei yamim tovim shal Rosh Hashanah, which again makes it sound like even on both days of Rosh Hashanah, but the truth is the halacha is not actually like that. So Nardoi Amri, the Nardoim say af bebeitzah. The Nardoim say the truth is even by Beitzah you can be megal. Rashi says, no dabazeh mutaras bezeh, that ultimately, again, if the egg is born on one day, it's permitted on the second day. So here, the Nardoi want to say that even by Rosh Hashanah, remember again, we've already established what's the status of an egg on a regular 2-day diaspora Yom Tov. What's the status? No dabazeh mutaras bezeh. Right? Born on the first day Yom Tov, you can go ahead and utilize the egg on the second day of Yom Tov. Now Rav said, by the Shtei Yomim Tovim Shal Rosh Hashanah, because it's a Yoma Arichta, Nolda Bazu, or Bazeh, Asura Bazeh. The Nardam come along and they say, even by an egg, Af B'Beitzah by Rosh Hashanah, Nolda Bazeh Mutaras Bazeh. Why? He says, what are you worried about? Maybe you're concerned that Elul is going to be an Iber Chodesh, is going to be a complete month. Rav Lo matzinu elul mu'uber. That's never happened. So in the times of Ezra and on already, we have never seen a month of Elul that has a full 30 days. Amar Mar Zutra, lo aman elul dishtoi, aval lo ishtoi mishahinon le. Furthermore, I will say, jumping back to the mace for just a moment, when do we say, lo aman Rashi says, dis asku ba Yisrael? When do we say that halacha lamaisa on second day Yom Tiv, that you could have Jews bury a mace? That's only de ishtohi. Rashi says, ela de ishtohi, o misyare shelo yasriach. So it's actually very interesting. Rav Ashi says, when do we allow Jews to go ahead and bury a mace on Yom Tiv? That's when the person passed away before Yom Tiv. For whatever reason, you didn't get the levaya done. And the concern is that if you push it off anymore, it'll be an even greater lack of kavod hameis. However, again, avalo ishtoi, but if, again, now lo ishtoi bepashtus means that halacha lemaisa, if the person didn't pass away before Yom Tiv, so the person passed away on Yom Tiv itself, in which case, again, we're not so concerned if you wait a day. If you wait a day, nothing terrible is going to happen to the mace. Mishahin alei. Ultimately, again, we wait. And I will say that is not the halacha as codified in Shulchan Aruch. The halacha as codified in Shulchan Aruch is what we said before. That halacha lamaisa Yom Tov Rishon. We have non-Jews bury. Yom Tov Sheni. We can even have Jews bury. Interestingly enough, I will say, there are. We don't recognize it today because of many of the halachos concerning, or I should say, the metzias of refrigeration. But for example, lo aleinu, we should never know, but when a person passes away, there's a halacha that you're supposed to take the mace and put them on the earth, put them on the floor. So, for all of these minhagim, there are esoteric concepts, right? But there are also very practical, utilitarian concepts. Why do you put a mace on the floor? Because to slow down decomposition. Right, because the floor is colder, you slow down, right, you bring down the temperature, slow down decomposition. So for example, there are many contemporary poskim that say that one doesn't have to be makpid on that, to put a mace on the floor, especially if a person passes away in a hospital where sometimes, again, these things aren't so pashut if it's a hospital that doesn't understand Jewish custom. Another interesting example, shmira. There's a concept of being a shomer, right? Not leaving the body alone. So there's an esoteric idea that until kvura, the neshama hovers over the body. So we don't want to leave the neshama alone. On a very practical level, why did Chazal mandate shmira? Achbarim, mice. They didn't want rodents going ahead and, coming along and taking away from the dignity of the body. So again, it's interesting to see how because of a difference in contemporary circumstances, many of these halachos and minhagim may be modified contemporarily. Okay, interesting idea. So we should be zocheh to celebrate, should be zocheh to steep ourselves in halachos concerning simchas. Rav Ashi Amar, Afagav delo ishtoi, nami mishahin alei. Rav Ashi says, no, even if the person didn't pass away before Yom Tiv, and therefore the burial has been delayed, you could still go ahead and conduct yourself in accordance with the halachos as espoused above. Namely, Yom Tiv Rishon, you go ahead and you have non-Jews do it. Yom Tiv Sheni, even Jews could do it. My taima, listen to this. Yom Tov Sheni lagabe meis kechol shavye rabbanon. They both say this is a dramatic halacha, because Rav Ashi comes along and essentially says that when it comes to kavod hameis, Chazal made Yom Tov Sheni essentially into a weekday. It's a weekday, right? So this is an incredibly important yesod. Remember, Yom Tov Sheni is a din d'Rabbanan. So Chazal, we see this many times where Chazal suspended their legislation in the face of kavod abrios. Now, kavod abrios is the term that we use for kavod ultimately, again, for the living, right? Kavod ameis is the term that we use for the kavod afforded to individuals ultimately, again, when they're dead. So therefore, Rav Ashi says that halacha l'maisa, we treat Yom Tov Sheni like a weekday when it comes to kavod ameis. So the Gemara says, therefore, afilu lemegas leglima or lemegas leasa. But say, not only are you allowed to go ahead and what? Not only are you allowed to go ahead and bury the individual, but you're even allowed to what? Make tachrichim. You can make shrouds, right? Or lemegas leasya, to cut down a myrtle branch. Now, interesting enough, why would they cut down myrtle branches? So Rashi says, hadas hayu manichin amitas meis lichvodo. They replace myrtle branches on the bier, right, on the bed of the mace. There was another reason also they put myrtle branches, was in case in the event that there was a smell, right? So the myrtle branches would go ahead and help to offset the smell. Okay. Rabbi said, this is incredible. So Ravina said, this is fascinating. Ravina says, but today we have to deal with the chabarin. Now we'll say, who are the chabarin? Rashi says, Uma Rishash Haimei Parsim. This was a very wicked group of people during the days of the Persian. V'kolfin es Yisrael lasos malachton. And they would force the Jews to work. Now, b'yamtiv hayunitchin mehen al yidei shayu omrim lahem yamtifu v'emira osa mekabre meisim yakofu osa l'malacha. So we'll say, listen to this. Isn't this fascinating? So comes along Ravina. Ravina says, today we have to contend with the chabarin. So the chabarin were these people. They would force the Jews to work. The Jews got off work. It seems to me that Shabbos was easier to get off work. Yom Tiv, very often if you have to explain Yom Tiv to an employer, right? So often, I don't have this problem, but interestingly enough, the one question, many other problems, but the one question often, so many holidays. So many holidays. So these chabarin used to give the Jews a difficult time with getting off of Yom Tiv. So Ravina says, if the chabarin see us burying our dead, they're going to think that we're making up this whole thing about not being able to come to work on Yom Tiv. So therefore, again, this is amazing. So Ravina says that today, when we have to contend with the chabarin, we do not go ahead and bury on Yom Tov Sheni. We don't bury on Yom Tov Sheni. Because if we do that, we run the risk of losing out on the opportunity not to have to work on Yom Tov. Incredible. Ravina Havi Yosef Kamed Ravasi. Bishnei Yom Tov Shah Hashana. Ravina was standing in front of Ravasi, or I think he changes it here, to Rav Ashi. To Rav Ashi, on the 2 days of Rosh Hashana, Chazyei Dahava Atziv. So he saw that he was sad. So I will say, Amrle, Amai Atziv. He said to him, why are you sad? And Rabbi said, I just want to tell you. Look, understand, we're learning this Gemara of Rosh Hashana. What do you see from this Gemara? That you're not supposed to be sad on Rosh Hashana. You see people, isn't this incredible? Ravina sees Rav Ashi. You see a Jew who's tzabrachin. You see a Jew who's crying. You see a Jew who's down. And you see them Rosh Hashana. And what do we think? It's tzaddik. Tzaddik, right? It's almost like sometimes in Yiddishkeit, the more miserable you look, the more pious you must be, right? Mamish, this guy's always upset. Tzaddik Yisod Olam. So here, Ravina sees Rav Ashi on Rosh Hashana, and he says, why are you sad? So I will say, what do you see? On Rosh Hashana, Rabbi Nachman's halacha still applies of mitzvah gidola lios b'simcha tamid. Rosh Hashanah is a simchadik day. Rosh Hashanah is an incredible day where ultimately you have the opportunity to be mamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We get the ability to coronate God. We have the opportunity to spend days with the Ribbon Shalom, the opportunity and the great zechus to do tshuva. Ein simcha gidola mizo. So Rav Ashi comes along and Ravina comes along and he sees Rav Ashi sitting on and he sees he's sad. What's wrong? How could a Jew be sad on Rosh Hashanah? I just want to point out, doesn't mean you don't cry in Rosh Hashanah. So remember again, there are tears of joy. Just because a person cries doesn't mean that they're sad. Crying is often just a manifestation of a deep feeling of emotion. In fact, the Arizal says if you cry over Rosh Hashanah, when you cry on Rosh Hashanah, the Arizal says that's a siman that they're judging your neshama in Beis Din Shel Mala. If you feel moved to tears at any point in time, that means that moment, you are being judged. So the tears are not a manifestation of sadness. The tears often are a manifestation of the overwhelming nature of the day. But even in the overwhelming nature, a person has to make sure to constantly be in a state of simcha. Amarlei. So Rav Ashi says, I'll tell you why I'm upset. I forgot to make an Eruv Tavshilin. Now, both say, look at Rashi for just a moment, which also tells you something amazing. You think to yourself, I forgot to make an Eruv Tavshilin. My gosh, it's Yom Tiv. Right? It's Rosh Hashanah. It's the Yom Adin. And you're thinking about your Eruv Tavshilin, Rav Ashi? And the answer is, yeah. You know why? Because you can't have Ruchnius without Gashmius. Because at the end of the day, if a person wants to be a spiritually healthy person wants to have a proper ruchnius, your gashmius has to be intact. We all know this. This is not, and it's not a pegam. We often think that sometimes, again, if I was really pious, all I would daven for is the ruchnius stuff and not worry about the gashmius. For 99.999% of people, I need my gashmius to be intact in order for my ruchnius to rise to the level it should be. And even a Rav Ashi, he doesn't have an Erev Tavshilin, I'm not going to have a nice Su'udah. That's atzvus. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, Amalei Dolo, says if or Eruve Tavshilin, Lo Shafti Kilomar, Lo Echanti Li Eruve Tavshilin, therefore, so Levasham Yom Tov L'Shabbos. So this obviously was talking about a situation where it was Yom Tov going to, remember again, when do you make an Erev Tavshilin? When you have Yom Tov going into Shabbos. By the way, we're going to do the sugya of Erev Tavshilin in Be'ah. It's actually a fascinating sugya. So when you have Yom Tov going into Shabbos, remember, Rabbi, it's like back to Rabbah. What did Rabbah teach us? Hachana de Rabbah. What did Rabbah teach us? Remember? What did Rabbah teach us? Good. Rabbah teaches us that ultimately, again, right, Chol Mechin L'Yom Tov, Chol Mechin L'Shabbos, Ve'ein Shabbos Mechin L'Yom Tov, Ve'ein Yom Tov Mechin L'Shabbos. You cannot prepare from Yom Tov to Shabbos. If you can't prepare for Yom Tov to Shabbos, then what do you do when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos? It's called, you make an Erev Tavshilin. Very quickly, what does an Erev Tavshilin do? An Erev Tavshilin, in a sense, you put aside your baked item, your cooked item before Yom Tov. That's the beginning of your Hachana. And therefore, again, any subsequent hachana that you do over the course of Yom Tov is considered to be an extension of that hachana you started on Erev Yom Tov, right? We'll say it has nothing to do with the magical power of a piece of gefilte fish and matzah, right? It's not like somehow like you some kind of incantation and everything is. Well, again, we'll discuss all the halachas. In any event, so Rav Ashi is upset because he didn't make an Erev Tavshilin. So says the Gemara, Amarle. Velosiv Mar Ha'idna. So Ravina says to Rav Ashi, what's the big deal? Just make an Erev Tavshilin right now. In other words, they both say, go ahead. What Ravina was advising him to do was to make an Erev Tavshilin al T'nai. We're going to talk about this sugya, which is as follows. Essentially, what you do is like this. Let's say, remember, it's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, 2 days of Rosh Hashana. So what do you do on Thursday? You take your Erev Tavshilin and you say like this. If today is Yom Tiv, then the declaration and the setting aside of the food is meaningless. But if today is Yom Tov, then that means that what? Tomorrow is what? Tomorrow's Chol. Which means any preparation I do tomorrow is going to be permitted anyway. And if today is not Yom Tov and tomorrow is Yom Tov, let the Erev be Chal today. Let me make the Erev Tavshilin today. And any preparation I do tomorrow will ultimately be a continuation of this preparation. So it works. So Ravina says to Rav Ashi, just make your Erev Tavshilin right now. Al tonight. So the Gemara says, Rava said that a person could do this. We'll say, we'll discuss this. That a person, if they forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, could literally make an Erev Tavshilin on the first day Yom Tov with a T'nai. Again, if today's Yom Tov, then X. If today's not Yom Tov, then Y. Amrulay to which Rav Ashi said, no. Amrulay, Emer Dama Rava b'shnei Yom Tov Mishal Golios. B'shnei Yom Tov Mishal Rosh Hashana mi Amar. Rabbi says, well, we constantly come back to this. That ability to make a T'nai, right, on the 2 days of Yom Tov only works when? Yom Tov Sheni Shal Gavios. When what? One of those days is Kodesh, and one of those days is Chol. When it comes to the 2 days of Rosh Hashana, where the days have a designation of a Yom Arichta, one long day, then such a Tanai will not work. Therefore, Rav Ashi says again, I know about the Tanai, but it doesn't work on the 2 days of Rosh Hashana. But the Nardoim said that even the 2 days of Rosh Hashana, no debazu, muteres bezu, which means that even the Nardoim would say that the 2 days of Rosh Hashana are not really like a Yom Arichta, but more like a typical Yom Tov Sheni Shal Golio situation. To which the Gemara says, Amar li Rav Mordechai, beferish Amar li Mar, de lo savar laha nardai. We don't hold like the nardai. Okay, which I will say is not a surprise, right? We kind of clearly rejected that position earlier on. We hold that the 2 days of Rosh Hashana ultimately are Yom Arichta. So we'll say, so another interesting nafkamina, another interesting practical difference, that apparently on the 2 days of diaspora Yom Tov, by all the other Yom Tovim, it appears that if you forgot to make your Erev Tavshilin, you could potentially make it on the first day of Yom Tov with a T'nai. Again, we'll talk about this in the Sugya of Erev Tavshilin, but that would not work ultimately again on the 2 days of Rosh Hashana, which have the status of Yom Arichta. The Nardoim disagree. They say Rosh Hashana is not a Yom Arichta, but we reject that view. We also see the Moshe Haskell, Mitzvah Gidol Yos B'Simcha, Afilu B'Rosh Hashana. Itmar, says the Gemara, Efrach Shanolad B'Yom Tiv, but it's a great case. Now you have a chick that was born on Yom Tiv. right? So remember again, we're transitioning now a little bit, right? Baruch Hashem, we went from the egg, Kanai they grow up so fast, right? We go in from the egg, and now we're up to the chick, right? So now the chick hatched on Yom Tiv. So what do you do with the chick on Yom Tiv? Says the Gemara. Efrach shnolad b'Yom Tiv. Rav Amar Aser. So Rav said ultimately the chick is going to be Aser. Ushmuel v'Itim Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mutter. Shmuel, we'll just go with Shmuel right now. Shmuel, some say Rabbi Yochanan say that it's Mutter. So we'll say what's the machlokes? Rav Amar Aser Muktu. Rav says ultimately again it's going to be Aser. Why? Because it's Mukta. Right? It's Mukta. Again, it was just born. It wasn't in existence at the onset of Yom Tiv, and therefore halacha l'maisa it is going to be Mukta. Ushmuel v'Itim Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mutter hoil umatir atzmo b'shchita. So we'll say this is very interesting. And Shmuel said in Rabbi Yochanan that halacha l'maisa it's mutter. Why? Because it becomes permitted through shchita. Now, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Hoil umatir atzmo b'leidaso lios nishchat. Remember again, once that chick is born, you could eat it. How can you eat it? Through shchita. So there's a mechanism, there's a halachic mechanism that renders it fit for consumption. Seeing though it was just born on Yom Tiv, Shmuel wants to suggest the shchita permits it. Finish that Rashi. He says, "Hol matir b'leidaso lios nishchat mashloyel lefnei daso af muktzeh hiftiras atzma b'leidaso demigo de iskin laha." So we'll say the same way that shchita ultimately again could go ahead and make it mutter out consumption. So too its leida, its birth, ultimately has the ability to remove its muktzeh status. Amalei Rav Kanov, Rav Asi l'Rav, v'chima bein zeh le'egel shenola b'Yom Tiv. So they asked Rav the following question. So Rav says that when the chick hatches on Yom Tiv, it's muktzah. It's muktzah. So they asked Rav, why is this any different than a calf that's born on Yom Tiv? As I will say, now we're presupposing that Allah Chalamai is a calf that's born on Yom Tiv, you're permitted to shecht it, you're permitted to eat it. Look at Rashi, Lego Shnal B'Yom Tiv, Disanya Lakama on Shemuter Bo Bayom, Divrei HaKol. We will see later on that Allah Chalamai you're permitted to go ahead and eat and shecht the calf that's born on Yom Tiv. So if you're allowed to shecht a calf that's born on Yom Tiv, why would you not be permitted to go ahead and eat the chick that hatches on Yom Tiv? Amar Lu Rav will say, Hoil umuchan agav imo b'shchita. Because remember, the calf is different. Because technically speaking, the calf was mutter already at the onset of Yom Tov. How so? If you were to shech the mother, right? The Bible says an interesting halakha. We saw this in Chulin. If you were to shech the mother, and you open up the mother and you find the calf in there, what's the status of the calf? Right? It's kosher. By the way, not only is it kosher, but it's kosher without what? Shchita, which is, again, this is called in halacha the ben pakua, which is really just a fascinating halacha, right? That you could have a living animal that does not require shchita, because it's not considered to be halachically alive. In any event, so the Gemara says over here something fascinating. The Gemara says, by the way, we'll say, I think that there's a lot of money to be made in the ben pakua industry, right? I'll tell you why. Because lemaisa, many of the halachos concerning treifas do not apply to a ben pakua. So it doesn't require ritual slaughter. And again, many of the other disqualifying factors don't. Different share. Anyway, so the Gemara says as follows, but I want royalties. If anyone does this. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, no, it's not comparable. Because lemaisa, the calf is mutter already from the shchita of its mother. In other words, the calf is already permitted from the beginning. So halacha l'maisa, again, it was never really set aside for non-use. The chick wasn't permitted. We'll say the issue with the chick, what's the issue with the chick? Is that it's in the egg. It's in the egg, so it's totally unusable. Meaning what the Gemara, what Rav is positing is the calf is technically usable at the onset of Yom Tiv. Now, not as a born calf, Rashi points out, Uber Yerach Imo, right? The fetus is considered to be an extension of its mother, and therefore when you shech the mother, the fetus becomes permitted as well. The calf becomes permitted. So the calf was really permitted from the onset of Yom Tiv. Uma bein zeh le'egel shenola minat treifa. Now they said to Rav, well, why should this be any different than a calf that was born to a treifa? And Rabbi said, this is an interesting case, right? Now remember again, so watch this. If you have an animal that's a treifa, right? A mother that's a treifa. You shech the mother, you open it up, and the calf is there. What's the status of the calf? Treifa. right? Because remember, again, we operate with the principle of ubar yerech imo, right? That the fetus, right? Or I should say, the animal in utero is an extension of its mother. If the mother is a treifa, so ultimately, again, the calf in utero is a treifa. Now, what happens if the mother births a totally healthy calf? What's the status of the calf? What's the status? Mutter, kosher. So they say it around like this. So I'll say, so what about the following case? What about a treifa mother who births a totally healthy calf on Yom Tiv? Now, b'pashtus, the halacha is that the calf is mutar on Yom Tiv. But using your logic, Rav, it shouldn't be mutar on Yom Tiv. Why? Because the reason you said that a calf before was mutar when it's born on Yom Tiv is because it was really already mutar from the beginning of Yom Tiv. It was mutar al its mother. But if the calf was born to a treifa, then it wasn't mutter to its through its mother. It's only mutter through its own birth. If that's the case, then it should be usher, because it should more resemble like the case of the chick in the egg. But yet Rav apparently doesn't make that distinction. I would say that even the Gemara makes no such distinction. The Gemara doesn't talk about a calf that's born to a healthy mother versus a calf that's born to a treifa mother. The Gemara just says if a calf is born on Yom Tiv, it's mutter shasik. Shasik Rav. So Rav was silent. He did not know how to answer this particular question. Amar Rabbi V'Teimer Rabbi Yosef. My time is Shasik Rav. I don't understand why Rav was quiet, because there's an answer to this. Leima lahu. Let Rav say to them, Hoil umuchan agav imo liklovin. It's true that the mother treifa cow was not fit for human consumption, but it was fit for what? To feed to animals. In other words, the mother was fit for use. Granted, again, not human consumption, but it was fit for use to feed for one's dog. Since it was fit for use, therefore, again, the calf in utero is considered to be prepared for use as well, already prior to Yom Tiv. Amar Abaye says like this, Amar Beis, Amar Abaye, Hashta, Muchan la'adam, Havi Muchan l'klavim. Now let's analyze this. In general, we say that if something is prepared for use by people, that doesn't automatically make it prepared for use for klavim, for dogs. Now, I will say, this gets into the topic of muktzah, right? And this gets into, all roads lead back to Rabbi Yehuda and to Rabbi Shimon when it comes to muktzah. And Rabbi Yehuda, with his more narrow view or more stricter view of muktzah, would really require for things to be actively prepared for use. So, for example, in that view of muktzah, if something is prepared for use, for human use, that doesn't automatically make it prepared for use for dogs. After all, this nan, here we go. You're allowed to cut up gourds for an animal on Shabbos Yom Tov. And I both say, now, this is not a muktzah issue, this is a tircha issue. Right? Remember again, the animal could technically eat the gourds even if they're not cut up, but Allah Chalamais, you're allowed to cut it up on Yom Tov or on Shabbos. Similarly, you could cut up an animal carcass to feed to your dogs, also on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda says, it depends. If the animal was alive and not an avela on Erev Shabbos, you cannot cut it up for your dogs on Shabbos, right, Rabbi Say? Because Rabbi Yehuda holds of a stricter view of muktzah, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going to go ahead and cut it up for your dogs, it has to have been what? Prepared for animal use before Shabbos. How is it prepared for animal use? If it died. But if it didn't die before Shabbos, died on Shabbos, halacha l'maisa, again, you could not cut it up. Because it's not prepared. To which the Gemara says, muchan l'klavim, have muchan la'adam. So he goes ahead and he explains that at the end of the day, anything that is muchan for dogs is considered to be muchan for people. Amar le'in, muchan la'adam, lo have muchan l'klavim. So the Gemara says, listen to this. So the Gemara says something very interesting. That which is prepared for dogs is prepared for use, for individuals' use. In other words, that as long as something is actively usable for dogs, we consider that to be actively usable for human purposes as well. But the converse is not true, which is, muchan la'adam, lo have muchan l'klavim. But that which is prepared for use by people is not prepared for use by dogs. Why? Because also the general klal is, if something is usable by me, I'm not going to use it for my dog. So interestingly enough, whatever is muchan l'klavim is muchan la'adam. Therefore, again, kind of going back, that's why when the treifa animal gives birth to a calf on Yom Tiv, right? On Yom Tiv, the calf is going to be mutter, because still the calf was considered to be prepared before Yom Tiv Agav Ima, because of its mother. The mother wasn't fit for human consumption, that's okay. It was fit to feed my animals as a treifa, right? As a treifa. And once it's fit for animal use, it's quote unquote fit for human use as well. But the converse is not true. Something which is actively fit for human use, by definition, is not fit for animal use. Why? Because Lamais, at the end of the day, whatever is usable for me, I'm not going to give up the use for me and allow my animals to use it. Incredible. Tanya Kavas, Tanya Kavas Dishmo. So also you have Beitzah that supports both Rav and Shmuel. So remember again, we're focusing on a very specific case over here, which is the chick is born on Yom Tiv. The chick hatches on Yom Tiv. Rav says Aser, Shmuel says Mutter. We're trying to figure out at the end of the day why that is. So far what we have is Rav holds that it's muktzah, Rav says that it's muktzah, and Shmuel essentially says since essentially shchita permits the use of the chick. Right? Shchita permits the use of the chick. And since shchita is able to take away, quote unquote, the status of a living animal and render it fit for consumption, so to the shchita is able to take away the muktzah status as well. We have a Beitzah that supports both of them. Tanya Kavaz, Rav, Tanya Kavaz, Dishmo. Here we go. B'tim Rabbi Yochanan. Tanya Kavaz, say Rav. We have a Beitzah that supports Rav. Egel shenola b'Yom Tiv mutter. If you have a calf that's born on Yom Tiv, the calf is mutter. Yet, efroach shenola b'Yom Tiv aser. But a chick that hatches on Yom Tiv is going to be aser. Uma hefresh bein ze loze. What's the difference between this one and that one? Right? What's the difference between the calf and the chick? So the Gemara says, ze muchan agav imo b'shchita, v'ze eino muchan agav imo. We'll say, so a very explicit Beitzah. What's the distinction between the calf and the chick? It's very simple. The calf was considered to be prepared for use already before Yom Tiv. How so? How so? Because it was consumable through the shchita of its mother. The chick was not usable by me before Yom Tiv itself, and therefore remains muktzah. Incredible. Tanya Kavase de Shmuel. We have a Beitzah that supports Shmuel. Vitim Rabbi Yochanan. Egel shenola b'Yom Tiv mutter. If you have a calf that's born on Yom Tiv, it's mutter. We'll say everybody agrees with that concept. That a calf that's born on Yom Tiv is mutter. V'afrach shenola b'Yom Tiv mutter. And I will say, look at this Beitzah. This Beitzah says that if the chick hatches on Yom Tiv, it's going to be mutter as well. My taima. What's the reason why they're mutter? My taima. So the Gemara says, ze muchan agav imo v'ze matir atzmo b'shchita. Because at the end of the day, again, the calf will become mutter because halacha lemaisa, it's right becomes mutter through the shchita of its mother, and ultimately, again, the chick becomes mutter through shchita. So we'll say, so this is a sheet. So remember, Rav holds that there's a distinction between the chick and the distinction between the calf. Right? The calf is ultimately mutter, going to be mutter when it's born on Yom Tov. Why? Because technically it was mutter before Yom Tov. How was it born before Yom Tov if it was never born? How was it mutter before Yom Tov? Through the shchita of the mother. Right? So, but Rav will say again, but the chick, which was unhatched before Yom Tov, ultimately remains in its state of Isser. Shmuel or Rabbi Yochanan hold that the same way that the calf is mutter before Yom Tov, als the shchita of its mother. So to halacha l'maisa. So ultimately the chick becomes mutter through its shchita as well. Good. Ten Rabbanan. Efrach shenola b'Yom Tiv. If you have a chick that was born on Yom Tiv, aser. Ultimately, again, the chick will remain aser. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, af b'chol aser. Oh, so now we just made a huge jump over here. So remember, we just went from a machlokes Rav and Shmuel, about what happens when a chick hatches on Yom Tiv, right? So Rav says aser, Shmuel says mutter, and we now totally transition to a different discussion. Again, we're not finished with that discussion, but watch what just happened over here. The Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, when the chick hatches, af b'chol aser. The chick is going to be aser, by the way, even during the week. Now, why is the chick aser even during the week? Watch this. Lafi shelo niftechu einov. He'll say because a chick is aser until it opens its eyes. Now, to be clear, remember again, a chick can only be consumed if you do what? Shchita. What the Gemara now is will say something fascinatingly amazing. That even with shchita, the chick is only ra'ui for shchita, is only fit for shchita after it opens its eyes. But before it opens its eyes, it is totally aser for achila. Where do we get that from? Watch. This is incredible. Keman ozlaha disanya. Whose opinion is reflected in the following Beitzah? L'chol hasheretz hashoretz al haaretz. Because the pasuk says, both say that there is a prohibition to eat shratzim, to eat creepy, crawly things. What does that come to include? L'rabos efrochim shelo niftechu einehem. Wow. We'll say a chick, when it first emerges from the egg, before it opens its eyes, has the status of a sheretz, has the status of a creepy, crawly thing. I will say, what happens if you do shchita on shratzim? Right? It's meaningless. Right? A sheretz is a sheretz is a sheretz. Whether you shacht it or not, it's still going to be problematic. So we'll say, isn't this absolutely incredible? That halacha l'maisa, a chick before it opens its eyes, has the status of a sheretz. And therefore, ultimately, again, will be aser, even with shchita. Kiman, Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov. Ultimately, again, whose opinion does this reflect? It reflects Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Amar Rafuna, Amar Av. Rafuna says the name of Rav. Beitzah im yitziasa nigmara. So we'll say now another statement, and we'll say that again we're gonna get to the halacha l'maisa and all of these things in Mir in tomorrow's daf. But again, this is pretty riveting. You know, I'm seeing like that a beitzah. First of all, we'll say I don't know that there's something else in halacha that exists like this. Maybe there is, but I was thinking about this of something that transitions from sheretz to behema or to oaf tahora, right? From behema to oaf tahora. So here you have the chick. Before it opens its eyes, it's a sheretz. After it opens its eyes, it's an oaf tar, right? It's a kosher bird. So pretty incredible. So Rav Huna Beitzah mitziasa nigmara. Rav Huna said the name of Rav. An egg is considered to be complete when it emerges from its mother. So what's the pshat? My mitziasa nigmara. What exactly does that mean? What does that mean? So maybe you'll say that halacha l'maisa means as follows: that as soon as the egg comes out into the world, you're permitted to eat it with milk. But say this is a chulin discussion in general about halacha l'maisa, the ability to eat eggs with milk, right? The status of an egg. An egg is something that separates from an animal, yet it does not have a fleshig designation, right? Which is interesting. See, if you mean what it means to say is that halacha l'maisa, when the chicken lays the egg is no longer fleshig, right? And therefore you can eat it with milk. So is that inferring that if you shech the chicken and you find eggs inside of the chicken and you take the eggs out, that egg is bisari, right? That egg is considered to be fleshig? Is that true? Vatanya, we learned, this is fascinating. If you shech the chicken, you open up, you find fully formed eggs. Mutaros la'achlan b'chalav. You are allowed to eat those eggs with milk. Now, both say, now you have to be very careful over here. What's the case? What's the status? What's the nature of the eggs you're finding over here? Fully formed eggs. So the reason for that is in halacha, fully formed eggs are considered to be separate from the mother, even if they're still housed inside of the mother. In other words, if you were to shech the chicken, open it up, and to find not fully formed eggs, those eggs are fleshig, right? Those eggs are chicken. That's chicken, right? That's no different than any other part of the chicken. But halacha l'maisa, if you find fully formed eggs inside of the mother, mutter, it's permitted to eat it with chalav. So therefore, again, I will say, I don't need Rav wanted to say in the name of Rav that when a chicken comes out of the mother, it's ultimately, again, it's nigmara, right? It's gemura. So it can't mean that I can eat it with milk, because halacha l'maisa, if I shech the chicken and find fully formed eggs in the mother, I could also eat it with milk. Ela im yitziasa nigmara. Rather, what it must mean is that as soon as the fully formed egg comes out of the chicken, ultimately, again, you're permitted to eat it even on Yom Tov. Even if halacha l'maisa, the chicken lays the egg on Yom Tov, it's going to be permitted. It's going to be permitted. Then now that's in accordance to the position of Beis Shammai. Now you can infer from that halacha l'maisa, if you were to shech the chicken and find the egg inside of the chicken, it would be asher to eat it on Yom Tov. Is that true? Vatanya, we learned if you shech the chicken and you find fully formed eggs inside of it, mutaros la'achlan b'yom tov. Both say that's an easy case, right? Because remember again, in this case, when you shech the chicken, you find eggs inside of it, leaving aside the milchik fleshig designation, a part of fleshig designation. Those eggs are what? Part of the mother. So the same way you're allowed to shech the chicken and eat the egg and eat the chicken on Yom Tov. You can eat the eggs inside of it. V'chitema kamash malan bebraisa madla ashmoina b'masnisin. Maybe you'll tell us, well, the Bryce is coming to teach us something that we did not see before in the Mishnah. Hanamitanina. The truth is, we learned this. This is the opening Mishnah of Meseches Be'ah. What's the opening Mishnah? Beitzah shenolda b'yamtiv. That's when you have an egg that ultimately, again, the chicken laid on yamtiv. Beis Shammai omrim tochal. Beis Shammai says you could eat it. Beis Hillel omrim lo tochal. And Beis Hillel says you can't eat it. So we already have Beis Shammai on record saying that when the chicken lays a fully formed egg on yamtiv, you're allowed to eat it. Va'ad kan lo pligi Beis Shammai Beis Hillel benolda. And even the machlokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is only when what? Rabbi say when the chicken lays the egg. Aval b'moi iman divrei hakol sharion. Everyone agrees that if you shech the chicken and you find an egg inside of that chicken, both say, what's the status of the egg? What's the status of the egg? Mutter. Right? Even Beis Hillel agrees. Right? Beis Hillel's only problem is when the chicken lays an egg about being an potential issue of muktzah, or again, we had 4 different opinions. That's what Beis Hillel's problem is. But Lamaisa, the problem is when the chicken lays the egg. But if they shech the chicken and the egg is inside of the chicken, is absolutely mutter. Even Beis Hillel would agree. Maybe you'll say that Beis Hillel holds that when you shech the chicken and you find the chicken inside of the mother, ultimately, again, it's also going to be aser. And the only reason why the Mishnah frames the case as a machlokes where the chicken laid the egg, is just to illustrate this permissiveness of Beis Shammai Shita, that not only do they allow you to eat the chicken, an egg that you find inside the chicken, but they even allow you to eat what? The egg that the chicken lays. But Beis Hillel himself would actually hold that halacha l'maisa, you can't even eat the egg that's found inside of a chicken. That which we learn, but yet when we learned before, bless you, that when a person goes in and shechs the chicken, and you find inside of it fully formed eggs, you're allowed to eat it on Yom Tiv. So his opinion is that. Money, lo Beis Shammai, lo Beis Hillel. Both say it certainly won't be Beis Hillel, and even according to Beis Shammai, it's obvious, because halacha l'maisa, if you could eat the egg that the chicken lays, you certainly could eat what? The egg that you find inside of the chicken. So both say. So remember, we're just trying to figure out one simple thing over here. Rav Huna made a statement in the name of Rav, which was what? Beitzah im yitziasa nigmara, which is what? That halacha l'maisa, an egg, when it comes out, it is complete. We don't understand what that statement means. So we assumed up until this point that statement must somehow be related to our sugya of Beitzah shenol de biyamtiv, or you're shechting a chicken and you find the eggs inside of the chicken. Rather, the Gemara says, no. Ella im yitziasa nigmara umigadeles efrochim. Rather, says the Gemara, the impact of Rav Huna's statement is that it is only a chicken when it lays an egg. It is only I don't know, what is the laid egg? Is that the right English? Right? Only a birthed egg. Right? Only a birthed egg has the ability to go ahead and become fertilized and have chicks. However, b'mai ima eina megadeles efrochim. But halacha l'maisa, when the egg is inside of the mother, it does not become, right? It is not capable, ultimately, again, of having chicks. So again, we'll define this in just a moment. But the idea here, lamai nafkamina, what does this matter about? So therefore, again, it turns out something amazing, that Rav Huna, when he says in the name of Rav, that Beitzah im yitziasa nigmara is actually not a Hilchos Yomtiv statement. It's not a Hilchos Yomtiv statement. What is it? It's a Choshen Mishpat statement. It's telling you that halacha l'maisa, if somebody tells you that they want to buy eggs with the intention of having chicks, right? They want chicks. That halacha l'maisa, really the ideal is they're buying eggs that were already birthed, not eggs that came from inside of the chicken. L'may nafkamina, the Gemara says, l'mekachu memkar. What's the nafkamina? The nafkamina ultimately, again, will be for a case of mekachu memkar, for a case of a sabosai. We'll pick up with this case in Yisrael tomorrow. I just want to end off with one last piece. So again, therefore it turns out that Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, his statement did not have a Yom Tov impact. It had nothing to do with Machlokes with Hashem Beis Hillel. Nothing to do with shechting chickens, not shechting chickens. It's a mekachu memkar. It's a commercial statement. And it has to do, again, when somebody wants to buy chick eggs that are capable of hatching chicks, what they're looking to really buy is what? Eggs that were laid. Eggs that are in the nest, not eggs that are inside the mother. So I'll just tell you, it's incredible that we're doing this daf in Meretz Hashem on the moments before Rosh Hashanah. because there's an incredible Musar Haskell in this Gemara as well. We spoke about the case of the chick that's born on Yom Tiv. Right? We saw there was a machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Efroach shenola b'Yom Tiv. So Rav says mutter, right? Rav says Asher, Shmuel says mutter, leaving aside the halacha. But there's an incredible hashkaf on this as well. Rav Kook, Rav Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Kook says, if you think about this in just a moment, why does a chick peck its way out of the egg? Right? Think about this. I would assume life is good in the egg. Right? Life is good. I've never been there, but I'd have to imagine that life inside the egg, right? No one's bothering you. No one's shepherding you. Right? Whatever you need to be able to sustain, you have inside the egg. You have protection. Your mother's sitting right on top of you, right? And pretty much life is fine as it is. What propels the chick to peck at the shell? And says Rav Kook, because the chick knows that as great as the egg is, there's something even greater waiting for it on the other side of the shell. There's something even greater waiting for it in the world. The egg is great. But there's something even more. They'll say, what's our avodah on Rosh Hashanah? What's our avodah? There are so many things that we have to do. But the most important avodah is to begin to chip away at the shell. Because most of us live in a shell. We live in a casing of mediocrity. We live in a casing in a shell of complacency. We kind of get into a rhythm. We get into a way we live, right? I do this, I do that, and we coast. And the truth is, we create a shell around ourselves. And the shell is very comfortable, and the shell is very nourishing, and the shell is very protective, and the shell is very nice. But what we forget is often what's on the other side of that shell could be so much greater. What's on the other side of that shell could be so much more rewarding. What's on the other side of that shell could have so much more kiddushin, so much more spiritual nourishment. And Rosh Hashanah is the day when we find the courage to begin to peck away at the shell. I don't want to live my life in the egg. I don't want to live my life in the shell. I don't want to live my life in this casing. I want to do more. I want to be more. I want to grow more. You know what Rosh Hashanah is? Rosh Hashanah is mamish contained in Beitzah, Daf Vav and Aleph. Rosh Hashanah is Efroach Shenolad b'Yom Tiv. Hayom Haras. I will say, on Rosh Hashanah you have to make a choice. Do you want to be the chick that is born? Do you want to be the chick that pecks through its egg? Or do you just want to stay in the egg, the olam vayed? Because there are people who stay in the egg until 120. And the egg is nice, and the egg is not a bad existence, to be clear. The egg is not averis, it's nothing. It's just an egg. And you ever see a chick in an egg? I haven't, but I would imagine. That it's all huddled up, and there's not a lot of free space in the egg. It's not like, I got myself a 3-bedroom egg. It's confining. It's confining, right? The chick can't stretch out. The chick can't stand up straight, but it's comfortable. Because it's nice to be huddled up, right? No one bothers you, no one pushes you, no one really expects anything of an egg, right? You never get mussar when you're in an egg. Why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you being better? What do you want from him in an egg, right? No one expects an egg to be anything more than an egg. It's a very comfortable space to live in life, but we totally undersell our potential, and we totally miss out on the beautiful opportunities of growth in life if we don't find the courage to peck our way through. Says Rav Kook, Kadosh Baruch Hu programmed it in nature that the chick pecks through the egg because the chick knows that as great as the egg is, there's something even greater on the other side. May we be zochem Yiras Hashem on this Yom Adin, on this day in which we are Mamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this day in which we coronate the Ribbon Shalom as our God, to find the courage to be an Efroach Shenolad b'Yom Tiv. On this Yom Tiv, when we celebrate the birth of the world, may we be zochem Yiras Hashem to celebrate our rebirth, our coming out of the egg, our chipping away and pecking away at the things that confine us, and to pave a year of incredible growth, incredible hatzlacha, and incredible self-actualization. We'll say, a good Kibben is a beautiful year of learning together. Maybe Zochem Reshach Baruch Hu should inscribe us all together with our families in the Sefer HaChaim for another year and many years of learning together, but halavai not in Baltimore. And Yitz and Shira rebuilt Yerushalayim with our Beis Hamikdash and Hira B'Yameinu. Amen.